The small Simulation Settings button on the At-Risk ribbon opens a dialog box where you can change a lot of settings for the current simulation. You probably won't need to change any of these settings except for the number of iterations and possibly the number of simulations. And you don't need the dialog box for these, but you ought to be aware of the possibilities. The General tab provides an alternative way to specify the number of iterations and the number of simulations. It also lets you enable multiple CPU cores in a single machine to speed up simulations. You are allowed 2 CPUs in the professional version and an unlimited number in the industrial version. This setting is enabled by default. The bottom section allows you to display either random or static values in the uncertain input cells. This setting can be changed by toggling the dice button, or it can be changed here. You might find it disconcerting to have, quote, random values that don't change when you press the F9 key, in which case you can choose the random values setting. On the other hand, the static value setting can be very useful when you want to see what the results would be in a deterministic setting, that is, where the uncertainty is removed. Note that the drop-down for static values allows 4 possibilities: expected values, true expected values, modes, or percentiles, where you could choose the percentage. The difference between expected values and true expected values is relevant only for discrete inputs. In this case, the true expected value could be a value like 13.3. In contrast, the expected value setting would round this to 13. The idea is that if only integer values make sense, a value like 13.3 shouldn't be shown. In any case, the random static setting has absolutely no effect when you actually run the simulation. In the View tab, the top section provides options on what you see when you run a simulation. For example, if you don't want a chart to pop up automatically, you can choose None. This is equivalent to toggling the button next to the dice button to white. Alternatively, if you select Demo Mode, this is equivalent to toggling the button to the left of the Start Simulation button to orange. The Show Results Summary Window option opens the summary window instead of the Browse Results window when the simulation runs. The bottom section of the View tab provides other viewing options, which should be self-explanatory. The Random Numbers section of the Sampling tab contains some important settings. First, the sampling type is either Latin hypercube or Monte Carlo. Given that spreadsheet simulation is often called Monte Carlo simulation, you might expect Monte Carlo to be the preferred sampling type, but it isn't. For technical reasons, Latin hypercube is much more accurate. It is the default at-risk setting, so unless you have a very good reason, you shouldn't change it. The generator is the method used to generate uniformly distributed random numbers between 0 and 1, the building blocks for random numbers from any distribution. Researchers have developed many random number generators, and any in the generator list should work well. The default Mersenne twister shown here has good statistical properties and is a good choice. The initial seed can be fixed at any positive integer value, or it can be random. The fixed setting is a good one if you want to be able to replicate your results at a later time. But if you want different results each time you run the simulation, you should use the random option. Finally, you should usually keep the All Use Same Seed for the multiple simulation setting. This provides a fair comparison when you run multiple simulations with a risk SimTable function. The other options in the bottom section of the Sampling tab are more advanced, and you can read about them in At-Risk's help. You will probably want to keep them at their default settings. Similarly, the settings in the Macros and Convergence tabs are more advanced, and you probably won't need to change any of the default settings. Just be aware that it is possible and sometimes very useful to write macros that perform various tasks before, during, or after a simulation run. The options in the Macro tab let you implement this. Of course, you have to write the macros in Excel's VBA, Visual Basic for Applications, macro language. Finally, keep in mind that these settings are for the current simulation only. If you want to make more permanent changes to the look and feel of At-Risk, you should change Application Settings, found under the Utilities dropdown.